Okay, that is number 13, page 9, from the first book of Practical Studies by Gerald Bordner. And it's the topic for today's video. I'm going to walk you through a few tips, a few things that can help you with this music. So if you'll give me a second to get reset, we're going to walk through this together. Okay, welcome back. So we're set up now. I've gotten the trombone out of the way. We're going to walk through a few of these things together, and then I'm going to give you some tips specifically, phrase by phrase, part by part, as they come up based on what I think might be tricky for you, and give you some options along the way that can help you. So, as I've talked about before, there's a sort of music reading PEMDAS. For those of you that are in math class and understand the order of operations, you know what PEMDAS is. And it's the idea that certain things have to be solved before other things can be solved in order to get to the correct answer. And musically, we need to have an order of operations that's very similar to that. So we always start top left, all the way extremely to the far left. And the thing that I see over here in the far left is the clef, bass clef. We know it and love it. It's our normal clef. The reason it's important to check that is because there's a very similar book by Getchell, first book of Practical Studies, that has the same color cover as our trombone book, and some very well-meaning person might make a copy of number 13 from the trumpet book, which is not the same etude, and you might be in a world of confusion. So always make sure that you're dealing with number 13 on page 9, and that your clef is a bass clef at the beginning. Then after that, we have our 3 flats in the key signature. And for the sake of brevity today, I'll just tell you that that's the key of E flat. So it would be a really good idea for you to practice your E flat major scale in conjunction with this etude. And then from there, we have our time signature. And in this case, it's common time. Another way of writing 4/4 time, which is the most common of the time signatures. That means there's 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. So it's pretty straightforward there. Now, let's talk a little bit about phrasing and setting up our breaths. Now, some might say, you haven't talked about any notes and rhythms yet. And you're right, I haven't really talked about any of that. But I think it's really important if we're talking about organizational things, if we're talking about structural things, if we're talking about order of operations, we need to know how long our phrases are so that we can know when we need to breathe. There's certain times, I'm sure you've heard the rule, don't ever breathe on a bar line. Well, until you should breathe on a bar line. There are certain scenarios where it makes sense for you to breathe on a bar line. So I'm going to take my Apple Pencil here. You should take your regular pencil and just have your music here in front of you. I'm going to mark a breath after measure 2. After the half note G, I'm going to put a breath over that bar line. And the reason I'm going to put one right there is because it's the end of a musical idea. And then we're starting a new similar music idea that starts on a different note name, but it's a similar contour and shape. It's one musical idea, and it's reiterated again. And that's a perfectly acceptable time to breathe on a bar line. So we're dealing with 2 measure phrases at the moment. So we would want to breathe after measure 2, and then we want to breathe again after measure 4. Now, one word of caution. These are half notes at the end of these measures. You want to make sure that when you're doing this, that you don't turn that half note into a quarter note. Now let me see if I can explain what I mean. You need to take time to breathe, right? You are going to have to rob that half note of a little bit of duration, not necessarily duration, but length, in order to make room for a full breath. Do your best to only turn that half note into a dotted quarter note. Only give yourself a half of a beat to take that breath, or less if possible. We want to do everything we can to maintain as much of that note length as possible, because he did not write 3 quarter notes in a quarter rest. He wrote quarter note, half note. So you want to give the illusion of that length and take only the time necessary that you need to take that breath and no more. So we're going to breathe after measure 2 and again after measure 4. Then you can say that we're going to breathe again after measure 6, after the half note A flat. Now here's where it changes. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4th measure of the second line, we have the dotted half note E flat. And then on beat 4, we have a G and a change in dynamic. Now, anytime you have a change in dynamic, it's not there by accident. It's there on purpose. The composer is wanting to change something in the way the music sounds. So in that spot, we don't want to breathe on the bar line. We want to breathe between the E flat and the G. So let me demonstrate those first 2 lines for you, give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So when we change there, we're changing the mood, we're changing the character. I want to breathe at the end of the first idea and make that G part of the next thing. It's a pickup note into the next phrase. So you want to make sure you separate that with a breath. So this whole next section is lighter. It's more connected. We have more sets of notes under one phrase or one slur line. We want to make sure we honor that. Now, these are almost in every case here, I believe, half-step slurs. And a half-step on a trombone is difficult in terms of legato because we have to actually talk about what kind of syllable you use to execute that correctly. I think that when we use the da tongue, we have to make sure that we keep it as light as we possibly can. As I shift from that first musical idea into the second musical idea with the piano dynamic, I want to make sure that I'm still using enough air to create the phrase and give that idea of smoothness and connection without robbing the sound of its resonance and beauty. So let me see if I can demonstrate what I'm asking you for. I'm going to start a little bit before so you can hear the contrast. So I'm trying to create a character change, and it may not be soft enough to be true piano, but you never want to sacrifice your best sound to create a decibel level of a dynamic. I think that if you struggle with the softer dynamics, make your mezzo forte at the beginning a little bit louder so that you still have the contrast of the dynamic change without feeling like you have to sacrifice your sound to make the dynamic work. I think the combination of smoothing out the articulation, playing everything a little bit longer across the board, and then making sure that you da tongue lightly on the slurred notes. I'm not going to get into a big discussion today about methods of legato. There's more than one way to do it, but we'll just suffice it to say that whatever you need to do to make it sound connected without the smeary slide. The one thing that any teacher or judge at a competition wouldn't want to hear is this. You wouldn't want to hear that, right? So you need to do whatever you need to do. Discuss it with your teacher to come up with a plan for how to make that legato beautiful. Now, I'll do another video on legato at another point. But for now, just suffice to say, this whole softer middle section should also be more connected to my ear. Now, your teacher may disagree, but that's just my opinion. Now, if we go along the way here towards the end, where does it shift back? Because most music always wants to come back home. It's very rarely going to change halfway through and then not return to that first material. So we can call this first section, the mezzo forte section, the A material or the A section. And then when we get to this section towards the end of the second line that's softer and more connected, we would call that the B section. And then when we have the dotted half note F in the second measure of the fourth line before the quarter note rest, I believe that that next bar where it returns to mezzo forte is a return to something very similar to the beginning. Now the interval is different. Instead of going down, it goes up, but it's still 2 quarter notes followed by 4/8 notes followed by quarter, quarter, half. It's a variation of the original A material, but it's the return of that dynamic. It's the return of E flat as the first note. And without getting too deep into the music theory, there's other reasons that would explain to my musical ear why we're returning. But more than anything, you can just hear that it's a return. So that last section, to me, we have a return in mezzo forte for 4 measures, and then it comes back again, just like the beginning, at forte, the loudest dynamic so far. So when it restates it the very last time, it really wants you to know that it's truly back home now. It's not just in the home county. It's not just in the city limits, but it's in your driveway. It is home. So as you're working through this, you want to make sure that you're keeping all of those dynamics in mind, and you make enough room in your dynamic contrast so that your forte is truly louder than the things that came before, so that the judge or the director that's listening to you can tell just from listening that you know that it's a different dynamic and that you're doing your level best to make those dynamics really shine and really show a lot of contrast. So if we go back here for a second to the softer section, this B section of music, one of the other things we need to make sure that we guard against is not slowing down when it gets softer or more connected. There's a real tendency to have something like this happen. Again, I'll start a little bit before so you can hear the contrast. Have you ever had that happen? You ever had that happen in band class where the director says, don't slow down, don't slow down? It's probably happening in a section that's slower and more connected. So you want to guard against that. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and I don't know if I have it, well, I'm actually recording with it right now. If you have your phone, you can download a great app called Tonal Energy. It costs a few bucks, but it's a really, really comprehensive app that can help you a lot. You can also go to your computer, or if you have an old standalone metronome, use that. But practice the entire etude with the metronome so you can keep yourself honest regardless of how loud or soft you're playing or how connected or separated the notes might be. It's a great way to ingrain good musical pulse regardless of what's going on, and you can learn what your tendencies are so that you can guard against them. Now let's talk for just a moment about accuracy, slide accuracy. This etude really doesn't have a lot of opportunity to talk about alternate positions. I don't really see any that I need to consider. It's all pretty straightforward. It's in a range where there aren't tons of accidentals that exist. However, one of the things we do need to make sure that we talk about, especially when we're dealing with these eighth note runs that are scale-like, measure 1, beat 3, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, those 5 notes. Now those are easy notes. We've known those notes since we first started playing trombone. They're probably some of the first notes that you learned. And therefore, there's a tendency, I think, for all of us to get really confident in our ability to play those notes and not really think about it. But I want to draw your attention to one thing. So we're going from E flat in 3rd position, right, to F in 1st position. And then we have to go out to G in 4th. Now, that's normal. We all know that. And then A flat in 3rd, and then B flat in 1st. It's not so much whether I believe that you do or don't know what positions to go to. It's that we have to maintain position accuracy when we're moving through these lines of notes that are in a scale pattern. So the first pitfall that I see is not the E flat to the F, but it's the F to the G. You want to make sure that you're getting far enough out for the G. If you don't go far enough out for the G, it's going to sound right, it's going to sound correct, because it comes first before the A flat. Then the A flat's really going to sound wrong if you try to play it in a regular 3rd position. So you want to make sure that your 4th is far enough out so that your 3rd can be in the right spot. And that way when you get to 1st, that it can be in the right spot too, because I don't know about your trombone. I have a really nice trombone that I love from the Shires Company, but I can't play sharp 1st position. If my G is sharp and my A flat is sharp, then my B flat's going to sound wrong even though it's right in 1st position. So you want to make sure that you go through these and you're really checking to make sure that you're stopping the slide right in the middle of where that note is in tune. And it really becomes important also during the softer, slower, the softer, more connected section. It's going to be very, very important when we have accidentals that we correct halfway through the bar. We want to make sure that those are uniquely different as well. So looking at the last measure of the second line, you want to make sure that the A natural to B flat is in one place, but that we clearly go all the way out for the A flat when it's time to play A flat. Same thing a few bars later. Well, I guess it's the same thing. It's the same pattern each time. When we have the G sharp or the F sharp to G, there isn't a correction to F, but make sure that you do play G. You play F sharp. I keep wanting to say G sharp. You play F sharp the whole time. And the other thing you want to do is make sure that you're following the tonguing and slurring pattern that's on the page. I know that I said that it needed to be more connected and softer, but it doesn't mean that everything is all just one big legato phrase. We're still going to be honest to what we see on the page. Mr. Bordner did not write this. He wrote this. So you want to make sure that you are being honest to the markings that are on the page. So I hope that this helps. I hope it gives you some ideas for how to make this etude your own, but how to also make it easier to work on. A couple of general points that I would consider. There are how many measures in this entire etude? If you go through here, I'll just count them out with you now. Go ahead and count it out with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24 measures. Okay. So if you think about having 1 month, you give yourself 1 month. Today is, let's see, what day of the month is it? It is Tuesday, July 18th. So if you want to give yourself until August 18th to learn this etude, you could do a little bit less than 1 measure per day and simply add a measure as you go. Now, the cool part about the way this etude is written is that there's material that returns more than once. So honestly, if you learn the opening material, you don't have to learn new music every day. But I urge you to not feel like you have to learn all 24 measures in one sit-down setting. I've known a lot of musicians who've gotten very, very discouraged and frustrated by that. And there's no reason for that. Take your time. I would rather you be really careful and work on 2 measures or 4 measures and really have it sounding great. And then add 2 more measures to that. And then add 2 more measures to that. Pretty soon you're going to have a lot of measures collected that you play well and that you're really confident in. And you're going to run out of etude to learn because you'll have everything figured out in about a month's time. Give yourself that time. If you wait too long, if it gets too far into the fall, you're going to start to feel nervous. And this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be something that we enjoy, something that we grow by doing. We grow musically by doing these competitions. And it doesn't always have to be stressful. It can be fun. So, if you have any questions about what I've presented here today, if you have anything that you would like me to talk about specifically or have any specific questions, my contact information is going to be posted below, but you can also just feel free to add something in the comments. I welcome your comments, and I hope that it's helped. So take care, and the next one will be coming soon.